Welcome back, everyone. This is Robbie, and this is another episode of Miscellaneous Candor, frank, honest, and otherwise outspoken. Obviously, like everyone else, we're talking about the outcome of the elections this week. We have a guest, Mr. Randy Watson, and Stephen and I have a pretty interesting conversation about some of the topics, about some of the reasons why we think the election went the way that it did. And of course, because Stephen is Stephen, look forward to some interesting topics that don't have anything to do with the main one. But that's okay. That's what makes our podcast interesting, different, and definitely a fun time. So sit back, relax, and let's go. Welcome back, everyone. Here we are, Miscellaneous Candor, frank, honest, and otherwise outspoken. I'm Robbie, and this week we actually have a guest with us today, Randy Watson. We will get into that shortly, but I want to welcome back my co-host, Stephen Kennedy.
Hello, my people. It is I, Stephen Kennedy, your number one board certified atheist at your service.
I guess he's really just going to stand with that.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. Oh,
so
yeah, baby.
so we would be totally ridiculous if we didn't talk about the election. Obviously, we talked about it before, and we're going to talk about it this week. And then after that, we'll probably go back to our main themes. It may come up here and there, but we don't want to be tone deaf and totally ignore it. That being said, everyone, thank you for listening. Remember, please follow and like our podcast. But let's go ahead and let's jump in. So, Stephen, I was right. Trump won.
You know, I am doing this discussion very begrudgingly. I've been so disappointed, and my energy has been so drawn out just because of, the results. I'm so disappointed in America overall, and the fact that Trump, and is he is he a good salesperson, or are so many Americans just really stupid? That's a big question. And Randy, no offense, I don't know your political affiliation yet. Why don't you inform us?
Yes, so I am not a Trump supporter. I am a Democrat. I voted Democratic, and I actually am coming to you all from Detroit. So a swing, well,
Very
I'm in the
nice.
city, but a swing state, and really had the opportunity to get the full Monty, if you will, of election coverage over the last year, but definitely over the last 6 months or so when the campaign really kind of kicked into high gear. So I've seen it all, I've heard it all. I was able to see his commercials. I also saw the platform and what it was that Kamala stood for. So it was an interesting 6 month run.
So I want to just jump in here to your point and to Stephen's point. You both are from swing states. You're specifically from Detroit, and I want to just play this clip because I think it's really interesting. Because I think that what Trump did was pretty just it's crazy, right? In terms of the numbers, like the whole country was red. And we've been talking about the Latino vote and how much that skewed for Trump, but this is pretty interesting. Let me see. I'm going to play this. Hopefully, you guys can hear it.
Oh my goodness gracious. These are the types of groups that you would never have thought that Donald Trump would have gained so much support among 8 years ago when he first won against Hillary Clinton. Trump's was the best GOP showing among 18 to 29-year-olds in 20 years. You have to go all the way back to 2004. How about among black voters? It was the best performance for a Republican candidate for president in 48 years since Gerald Ford back in 1976. And among Hispanic voters, the exit polls only go back since 1972.
Okay, so What do you guys think about that?
Well, look, here's the thing. I think people are all these gurus on on the news. They're really trying to boil this down to in this postmortem. They're really trying to boil it down to okay, what are the three factors that the reason why Kamala lost and Trump won? But the thing is, there are so many factors that played into this. It's not just was it Latino voters? Was it this and that? There's so many different factors that played into it. There's race, there's ethnicity, who voted for Trump, who voted for Kamala. Were Americans truly ready for the double combo of a person of color and being a woman, someone like that being president? That's a big question right there. The other question is how many people voted. I know compared to last year to this year, there's several millions of voters that last year voted for Biden, or sorry, last election voted for Biden, but this year did not vote at all because they're probably stuck in that place where, the same kind of mindset that I was in is that I'm not a fan of Kamala, but she is definitely the better alternative over Trump. And so I got out there and voted for Kamala because, the overall surrounding politics that she had were were so much better and so much more in line with what I supported. Kamala specifically, I'm not a big fan, but again, everything around her, all her, all the politicians around her, all the decisions that she backs, I was for that, most of them.
Okay, so you mentioned ethnicity, and Randy, I'm going to ask you this, and you mentioned all these other things. So, one, that clip I just played, if people could hear it, is basically saying that yes, they talked about the Latino vote and all of that, but they also talked about even though Kamala got a huge amount of the black vote, it's more black people that voted for Trump in the last 48 years.
Hmm.
Like no, the amount of people, black people, we're talking about black voters right now, that voted for Trump was the most any Republican candidate has gotten in 48 years. So there's that. And Kamala was black and Indian, as people would say, so she says. But yes, okay, that's who she is. That is what she is.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
No, no, no. I want Randy to answer this
Okay.
question,
All right.
right? I
We'll
want
come back.
Randy to answer this question.
We'll
And
come
then also, we didn't talk about, we always talk about podcasts on here. Went on all the podcasts. Personally, I think she should have gone on Joe Rogan's podcast. Randy, what do you think about some of the things I just laid out?
So I'll give a couple of things that really come to mind for me. First and foremost, I think for Kamala, she is or was a great candidate. I don't know that she was the perfect candidate. I don't know that the perfect candidate exists, but the deck was definitely stacked against her. And when I say the deck was stacked against her, you were going, or she was going against a candidate that for the better part of 12 years has been campaigning.
yeah. Yeah.
He's created a brand. He has a brand. People know what to expect from him, right, wrong, or indifferent. You know what you're getting there. And as the statistics kind of denoted, for that 18 to 29 Rage Against the Machine, overthrow the empire, um, bracket, he's that. That's what really resonated with them. So there was that aspect.
Hmm.
And the second piece is something that I just read today, and I think it is just so appropriate for the days and times, and it's from Trevor Noah, and it is about apartheid. And basically, what Trevor Noah said about apartheid is if you find the right balance between desperation and fear, you can make people do anything. And I
Absolutely.
believe that that is the essence of everything that Trump did. And it's why he was able to be successful. Because when you think about all of those groups that voted for him and got behind him, some of them did it because they're like, I can't go through the challenge that I'm currently going through, whether it be
Hmm.
financially, which for most people is financially, right? I can't afford the same groceries that I was able to afford
Hmm.
4 years ago. I can't get the same vacation or I can't take the same kind of vacations. Things that are super simple for the average person are concepts that he distilled down and they really resonated with
Yeah.
the average person. Whereas for the Democratic Party, if you want to think of it as quote unquote the thinking party, they were really trying to get people to buy into a plan. And it's just a simple vision. Hey, you're in pain. I'm going to make sure you're not in pain. We might have to cut off your leg to not be in pain, but you're not going to be in pain anymore.
Mhm. You know, so it's fascinating how he really was able to play to people's fears and concerns. And for example, you take the immigrant issue. What he's saying about immigrants: they're taking your jobs, they're eating your cats and dogs, they're killing and murdering, they're murdering and raping people. um
Sorry.
and
So
you,
ridiculous.
you take that, you talk about inflation. Oh, the Dems created all this inflation. Your costs are all more. You can't buy bacon because everyone's looking for bacon as a first meal. You can't buy bacon because it's 4 times more expensive. And was that really the Democratic administration's fault in the last 4 years? Likely not. There's so many factors that play into this. Remember, we're coming back from COVID. We have the world's on fire right now. So there's so many factors that play into it that not even the Republicans could prevent. But his ability to distill it down to simple concepts for people that aren't exactly the best in understanding how the economic system works. I mean, he's a great salesman.
So
That's the
I agree
key.
with you. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I agree with you. And, I want to be clear too on this podcast. I was making a joke about so she says, Kamala is black and Indian. I mean, let's just not
And
stop with
and Randy, what race are you?
I am a black man in America.
Okay, and what's your religious affiliation, if any?
My religious affiliation, I guess that's a great question. I guess it would be Christian values is what I subscribe to. I don't know that I have just like I grew up Baptist, but I subscribe to Christian values essentially at this
Okay.
point.
And everyone knows I am a hardcore Christian. Go ahead, Stephen. Go down your road.
I, I'll hold off. I have so much to say. So you can go back to Kamala supposedly not being half Indian, and I'll go.
No, 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 no. I was making no, 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 no. Let me be very clear on that.
Okay.
He is
Because
Indian
I
black.
think that's kind of
There.
offensive, you being who you are, to accuse another
Was
minority of not
not.
being
No, I
what
was
they
not.
actually
I
are.
was making a joke based upon the conversations that have been out there about how ridiculous it was for people to be saying that.
Ah, okay,
Where
okay,
I was
fine.
coming from. Because
Okay,
I do
got
think that it was ridiculous. That conversation in and of itself was ludicrous. It
yes.
was. It was ludicrous. The idea that people were saying, and there were people of color who were out there saying they don't know what she is because of a lot of what I would say is the algorithm, the AI, fake AI stories, the things that are out there, conversations on these podcasts about that. And I feel like that was a distraction. I like you. I think that well, I think she lost for a variety of reasons, but I think that a lot of people voted for Trump, like you said, what Trevor Noah said. I don't know if he was on a podcast or not when he was saying that, but I know he has one. Um, but I will say that I didn't. There are things that I noticed. We've said some things on here, and I think this is why Trump won. We said the Democratic Party was the thinking party. There's a lot of people who voted for Trump who feel like the Democratic people think that they are stupid, that they
Yes.
don't know how to think, right? And one of the things that I know Charlemagne and Andrew Schultz were talking about on their Brilliant Idiots podcast, which we're still trying to get you to listen to, Stephen,
Yes.
was,
I'm taking
um,
note of that right now.
was that it doesn't matter what your intellectual capacity is. You don't need to be super smart to know you can't pay your bills. And that's real.
But
That's
it,
real
I,
talk. And I will say one last thing, and then I'm going to open it up to both of you. The thing I do remember, and people talk about how they had more money in their bank accounts when Trump was president. There was a period before COVID when Trump was president. They passed those tax things, and we got more in our for working people out there. We did get more in our checks because he cut down that tax that was being a certain amount of that tax that was being pulled out of your check. I remember that. Secondly, I remember when I was driving around where I live, I started noticing I do not subscribe to the whole conversation of quote unquote black jobs, but I remember seeing jobs that migrants and Latinos had in my area, I saw more black people in those jobs when he was president. And I don't know if people were observing that. I don't know if people who observed that brought that up in conversations, but I realized that people who voted for him, who probably were in those jobs, remember that. And that's why they voted for him. Okay, you too.
So from my perspective, I think what you mentioned about the Brilliant Idiots podcast is definitely what the case is. You don't have to be a genius to understand at the end of the month, my 10 is not equaling the 12 that I need. It doesn't take a lot of insight to figure that out. So hats off to him for really tapping into that. I think the challenge with him is it's really easy to sell someone a vision, right? Like you can sell anyone anything, but how do you put that into practice? And to the point that Steven was making a little bit earlier, he is at his core a salesman from his days in the 70s working in real estate in New York, all the way up through becoming a media darling, media personality in well before he went off the rockers. But if you think about like the apprentice days when
Yeah,
everyone's like, "Oh, I love this guy. He's
yeah,
like, he's cool. He speaks his mind. He's stern. He's direct. He's all of these things, right?"
yeah,
Yep.
But everything in moderation. It became too much, and he became this almost social pariah towards the end. But the essence of who he is never changed. He is someone I know what you want, and I can tell you what you want. Which there is genius in that. I don't think he is a genius, but there's genius in the ability to being able to understand what someone wants and being able to tell them what they want.
yes, exactly. Uh, my sentiment exactly. How one thing I want to point out. Um, yes, it doesn't take much to understand that your costs have gone up. It's simple to to sell that to someone because it is the truth. But having the kind of erasing the need for that audience to understand exactly how they got there is also another skill that he has, right?
Yeah.
He kind of beat in that fear that the Dems this to you. They were there. You now have nothing. You now have a lot. You have a lot. You make a lot less money. Everything costs more. But that whole middle area of how exactly it happened, he could never possibly explain himself because he doesn't have the brain power to understand it. Trump is not an intelligent man. He's a brilliant salesperson, but he's not an
Here we
intelligent man.
go.
But it is amazing that he was able to convey that fact and just place blame on one party without them questioning, did we really get here through the path that he's telling me? What are the cogs in the whole process? He erased that whole need for explanation, because if he were able to truly explain to it, the curtain would be removed and people would understand, oh, wait a second, maybe this isn't exactly what he's saying. There's a whole big process and all sorts of different connecting factors that play into why is there inflation, why do things cost more, why do we have less money in our pockets.
I agree
And
with you. I just think that people don't do that much thinking anymore. Randy, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that is absolutely the essence of it. But there's no need when someone is alleviating the pain, it's no need to explain why we're alleviating the pain. It's almost like if you
Right.
go to the doctor
No.
and you're like, "Hey, I broke my leg," and they set you up, they put you in a cast, they get you back on the road. It doesn't really matter that you broke your leg jumping out of the third floor window, which you should never really do.
That's a
Who gives a
very good
shit?
analogy. Yeah, yeah. Well, in this case, putting a fake cast on my leg and sending me off and saying it's going to be okay and making me think that it's going to fix it.
Yeah, but perception's reality. So
Exactly.
I totally understand that. Like it's just, well, yeah, it might work, it might not. Let's
Yeah,
just go ahead and give it a go. We figure it out.
yeah.
So, Randy, you listened to Joe Budden, right? Did
Mhm.
you have you listened to that podcast since the
I,
election
I
results?
I have listened to about a half of his most recent podcast. Um, And he may not be the best because he's done a wonderful job of trying to stay out of the political games
Yeah.
through any way, right or left, blue or red, however you want to think about it. But I think it opens the door to a strategic move that Trump made that I think was just amazing. And it goes back to him being this master salesman, or just being someone that's really good at sales. He understands where the audience is, which is what salespeople do, right? As a salesperson, you got to
Yep.
understand where you're going to make your sale, where the money can be made.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew eyeballs, or in this case, ears, are in podcasts. And he hit all of the top 10 podcasts, which is significant reach. The game has changed, and I believe one of the ways that Kamala kind of went off course, I'm not sure that she really adopted with the changing times. And the Democratic Party as a whole, I don't know that they truly adopt to a change in times, meaning the way that people consume content is completely different. And the last piece on this, from me at least, Trump ultimately took, is as much as he criticized and tried to tear down Barack Obama, he took his playbook and supercharged it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he now has been elected twice.
What
Mm-hmm.
do you mean to? Oh, you mean like his Celebrity Apprentice playbook?
No, not even his Celebrity Apprentice playbook. But if you can remember, or harken back, turn our minds back to 2008, well, really 2007, because I think he got elected in 2007, right? The way that he approached his campaign was heavily pop culture influenced. So it was, I'm going to use the celebrities of the moment to endorse me, rock the vote, get people out. I'm super charismatic. I'm going to be at the forefront of this. I'm selling hope. I'm selling change. Those are all of the things that he did. And it really shifted the way that elections were run. Or, well, not elections, but campaigns were run. And then now, if you think back to, I think that was 2016 when he had his first run, and the way that he ran that first election, it was sound bites, it was sound clips. He couldn't really get a lot of celebrities to endorse him or get behind him, but his celebrity is what really kind of reigned
Mm-hmm.
supreme. And now you look at, 2024, I believe is the year we're in. Took a moment for that to register, but it's the same thing. Like, he figured out a way to truly understand where people are and get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. And what do people say? They call it now main character energy. I mean, Trump has that main character energy, right? And I think that unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, that's what people are looking for. They're looking for, okay, if you're going to lead me, I want you to have main character energy. And some people say, well, that's the cult of celebrity. No, it's not the same thing. It's not like, you get J-Lo or Beyonce up there and then people are going to vote for you. Because guess what? They're not voting for J-Lo or Beyonce. They're voting for
Not at all.
you. They're voting for you. Do you have that main character
Mm-hmm.
energy? And it's almost like if you can say, so you all were talking about the broken leg. One thing on one podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, Raging Moderates or the Politics Like Us. What I can't remember. They were talking about how you can't tell somebody when they're in pain, okay, I know you're in pain, but it's real. You should be happy that you can see. You should be happy that you have a roof over your head, right? Like the gratitude conversation only works so much if you, like you said, Randy, you got 10 and you need 12. And I feel like that was a lot of the message from the Democratic side. And people weren't feeling that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a message that just doesn't resonate.
So I want to share an interesting, and this is another uh, perspective here, which actually it's not different, but it actually plays into what you're saying. A friend of mine, and goddamn, I'm embarrassed to call this guy my friend. Oh, he's so disappointing. He's so disappointing. You know, he's just such a disappointing person. I can't believe I'm friends with him. It's
Oh my
disgusting.
God.
I'd love to abandon some of my friends, really, but I wouldn't because
David!
I wouldn't because I know who they are at heart, on a one-to-one basis, and I'm still hoping to change them because I know that they have a good part, a good
You
person
can't
waiting for them.
change people, Steven.
I can change them. You know what I sound like right now? I sound like that 21-year-old that goes to strip club and falls in love with a stripper that, gives him a lap dance. He's like, I can change her. I want to marry her. I want to date,
This is
the
not her
person.
life. She's meant for so much more.
Right, right.
Oh my God. We're having
Wait a
another
second.
on this
Randy, have you and I both been there?
other evening.
Sorry, I digress. I went in a whole different, where was I?
You were talking about your friend who you
Right,
something.
yes.
Yes, yes.
So this guy, back, when the whole Israel, all that started, it's not too long ago. I mean, not started, but when it would relit, just about, was like a year and a half ago. um he was so distraught, so upset about, the Jews in the US being harassed. And on one hand, I was very impressed. And he's white Christian. He almost died and, was given a second chance at life, and he claims to have seen God while he was, you know, temporarily, dead. And when he came back, he became a much more devout Christian. I have issue with the fact that he thinks he saw God because, but I don't have the heart to tell him, look, it was all what you created in your head. Again, I digress. But going back on topic, um,
Here we go.
sorry, going back on topic. So he was so upset by Jews in the U.S. being harassed, because of what was going on in the Middle East. And I was impressed on one hand because he was actually caring about people outside the US, what's going on in the world. But what bothered me is that he's never once brought up any issue. Oh, and he's very pro Israel, very anti Palestine, okay? And he was very bothered by the whole thing and saying that Netanyahu needs to get rid of these folks. He needs to take care of it. It's that and it was very very anti, Palestinian, to the point where he displayed a, lack of caring for all the innocent children that were dying over there, which was really really disturbing to me. So that was one thing. At the same time, I was impressed that he was looking at what's going on at, other, outside of the U.S., all the atrocities. But I said, why is it that this is the first time that you're thinking about all the atrocities that are going on outside of the U.S.? Is it just because they're white? Because you've never once raised issue with all the atrocities going on in Asia or Africa. Why is this the first time you seem so butthurt? Like what? Why is it? And he couldn't really give me an explanation. And it's it's and so we've had this debate going for quite some time, and it's upset me that he raised such issue about this. And now just recently after the election, a lot of people, and I think it was in 12 states that are African Americans, they received hate text messages. And, for example, uh
Oh, I know what those text messages were.
yeah, and actually a friend of mine received one too. uh and there's people receiving these horrific text messages saying, "Greetings, N-word. Now that Trump is president, you have been selected to pick cotton at the nearest plantation. Be ready at 12 a.m., November 13th sharp. With your belongings, our guys will come get you in a van. Be prepared, to be searched down once you enter the plantation. You are in plantation group 8." Things like this going around. So I brought this up to my buddy, the same
Yeah.
guy. And you know what his response was? He said, "That's unfortunate." That was his response.
Hmm.
Now, I cannot I can't get away from the fact that, you know, there is a part of him that is racist, and it's disturbing. And this is a very well put together guy, in a general sense. So it's disturbing that someone that I consider to be a normal person in my daily life that I'm friends with could have this aspect of them, which is so disturbing. And that's the kind of person. There's a group of people like that Trump played to.
He definitely played to that group of people. I feel when it comes to people like that, it speaks to this universal challenge. And that universal challenge is being it's kind of twofold. One, when you haven't really experienced struggle, it's hard to relate to struggle. That's like the first core tenet. And then the second level of that is it's hard to recognize struggle, pain, strife in people that don't look like you.
Hmm.
So whether that be for men understanding the struggle of women, for white people understanding the struggle of black people, for Asian citizens understanding the struggle of Mexicans, or I shouldn't say Mexican, or Latino citizens, whatever the case may be, it's hard to understand the struggle that is not native to you. If it looks different than what you know or what you see yourself as, it's really hard to empathize
That's a good
and
point.
put yourself outside of it. Not to condone, it doesn't make it any better, but I think one of the biggest things that we can do as a world, and I think for myself, being a minority in America, I had to adopt this, is to just kind of have greater awareness of that element, that concept, principle, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing about this friend of mine was that he was very much, thinking that electing Trump, he voted for Trump. He's thinking that this will this will, help inflation. This will fix inflation. This will put more money in my pockets. He's like, I have 2 kids. I have 2 kids to feed. And the Democrats made things a lot worse for me. So it's an interesting world we live in. So many factors that play into this.
So I have a question for you. Did he vote for Trump all 3 times?
You know what? I can't remember. I I'm gonna have to ask him. I'm gonna have to ask him. I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. That would I would be interested to hear that. Um what was I going to say? I think I was going to talk about I lost my thought because that
The
conversation
strippers.
was a lot. No, I was not going to talk about
I totally lost train of thought because I started thinking about strippers. And,
Oh my God. Yeah, we'll have
It's
to
a
have a
very specific memory.
yes.
conversation about that website that you're on
Well,
now.
Randy, I do want to ask you very quickly.
Oh
This
God.
I feel like, at this stage of my life, strip clubs just don't do it for me, but it does it for my friends that are married. My friends that are married love going to the strip club. I'm like, it doesn't do it for me. I feel like the depraved, married men are the ones that really need the strip clubs to get away from their shitty lives with their wife and children.
I
I
thought you
can't
wanted
believe.
to get married at one point, Stephen.
I was getting married?
I thought you wanted to,
Oh, yes. I mean, I do. I do, as long as it's the right person.
so that you don't want to go to the strip club.
I I know. I
It
want
all
to find
starts with
that
one.
girl that makes me not need to go to a strip club. Yes,
Okay.
Uh,
You want her to
because
do a
my
strip
friends that are
show
married, they
at the
all
house?
we have a need to go to strip clubs.
So
And get,
you want her to do a strip show for you at the house?
of course, doesn't that go with the territory? I
I'm
say,
asking you. I don't know what your territory is. This is a
I,
question.
yeah, I expect my wife to strip for me.
there you
I
go.
expect strip shows. I'll put up a pole and in the living
Oh,
room, whatever.
It keeps the money, it keeps the flow of wealth in the house.
Exactly,
It's
exactly,
$100, $200, $500, whatever. You don't have to go out
exactly,
anywhere else, right?
God.
Uh,
exactly.
Go
it's a way of looking at it.
Go on.
Um,
What were you gonna say, Randy? What were you gonna say, Randy?
but I do think that it's a fitting cap. I know we're probably getting close to time, but it's a fitting cap.
No, we can keep
Um,
going. We can keep
oh,
going.
okay. uh, thinking about the difference of perspective and how life changes with the difference of perspective. I think, Stephen, that is an extreme example of how perspective changes.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get married and your desires may shift, the satisfaction you get out of different things changes, or politically, or when you're married and you have a family, what you're looking for and what your future looks like is a little bit different. And perhaps there's a world where you become a little bit more selfish as you develop family and are thinking less about the whole and
Yeah.
more about this individual home. Whereas for myself, as a single man, similar to you, I don't really get a ton of thrills from going to the strip club. However, some of the strip clubs do have amazing food and amazing
Yes.
prices
Yes.
because their business is not their business is not food. So you can get like an amazing meal for next to nothing because that's not what they're necessarily trying to sell. Um, they're definitely not trying to sell wing plates.
But the wings are good. That's what you're
But the
saying.
wings are good, and they have lamb chops. Like some of the strip clubs here
Lamb
have
chop.
amazing meals. They have full-on
Lamb
chefs that manage the kitchen. There's a
Lamb chop.
strip club, I believe, at one point. I don't know if they still have it, but at one point they had dollar lamb chops. I believe where
Oh
you go and
wow.
order
And
like
they were
dollar
good.
lamb chops. Yeah,
Wow. Okay. We're gonna have to talk about this. I need some details.
yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so one of the things that they were saying about this is that this was an election that was won by the manosphere, and I think that this conversation about strip clubs, keeping it in the wealth flowing in the house, putting up poles in the living room, and how good the chicken wings are at the strip club speaks to this. So while we're having this conversation, I wanted to know how you all feel about the whole men conversation. I know prior to the election, Stephen, you and I had a conversation with Bert, our guest, and we talked about men. And I talked about some of the articles I read about how men are floundering in this country. And do you all feel like that really, they're talking about it now, but are you seeing that in your conversations, in your friend groups? Are you seeing that men are floundering? Do you know some men that are like, this is just too much? And that's why, they were some of those people that went out and voted, independent of ethnic background. I just want to talk
Mhm.
about men for a second.
In my friend group, I don't see it a ton. I don't see a lot of that particular vulnerability, but I do recognize it in the greater galaxy. And ultimately, patriarchy reigns supreme. So it's an identity thing where for a lot of men, it's this is what I can still hold on to be a part of the institution. So I may not racially be a part of the institution. I may not financially be a part of the core institution. But you know what? I can check that third box. I am still a man and we can make that work. So there's a lot of
Mm.
people that do just feel that. And
Yeah.
when you begin to lose that, it's distressing. And I think that's what you're talking about, Robbie, is some people just don't have that anymore. Being a man in much the same way that at one point maybe being a traditional Anglo-Saxon male in America was your ticket to success. Just simply being a man is no longer your ticket to success.
Yeah.
Stephen, what do you think about that?
So I personally don't have floundering men in my social,
Upstanding men.
but I get your point. Why is that so funny?
Because just you and just keep talking, just keep talking. We're not going to go there.
Well, I agree with Randy. I mean, it's a good point. Um, and I think that there are a lot of guys out there that will feel that, okay, we need to, the only way we can preserve this hierarchy is if we vote for a man. It doesn't matter what his policies are. This is going to save America. Um, and thankfully, that is not, like I said, that's not. I don't have that in my social environment, but it's definitely out there.
Do you all think that a woman will ever be president in the United States? I found it really interesting. Like, for example, they keep talking about the Latino vote, right? And just how many Latino, particularly men, voted for Trump. But then right underneath us in Mexico, they elected the first woman president.
It is so
So
fascinating, right? It's very
and
fascinating.
so, and that's just one Latino country. I want to be very clear. I know there's many, so I'm not just saying all Latinos are Mexican. I'm clear on that. I want to be clear on that on the podcast. But I just want to know what do you all think about that? Do you think it's ever going to be a woman? Do you think it has to be a Republican woman the way we are now?
I I think at minimum it has to be a white woman. Whether
We had
it's
that with Hillary though, and she lost.
well that yeah, it's I mean, I'm saying there are so many factors that play into it. But if it's going to be a woman, one of the requirements is that it has to be a white woman. And I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I've been saying this for I've been saying this for years that even when Hillary ran, I was telling everyone America is not ready to vote in a female for president. I voted
Randy?
for her,
So,
but I still said I voted for her, but I still said she's not going to win because America's not ready for a female.
Well, that's why I said that I didn't feel like Kamala was going to win. I told you that up front. We have had multiple conversations on this. I don't know if I've said why, but that was one of the reasons why. But um, Randy, what were you going to say?
so I don't know that America is not ready for a female president. I believe, and I would be interested to learn what you two think. Robbie, you spoke of this earlier as that main character energy.
Yeah.
And in order to have a female head of state, a female president, what will have to happen is it's going to have to be someone that is relatable in much the same way that Barack Obama was just kind of this person that transcended race,
Yeah,
essentially, right? Like
yeah,
you in every at every level, there were, staunch Southerners that were like, you know what? I see myself in that person.
yeah.
Like I can see some of me in that person.
But do you think it had anything
And
to do with the fact that he's half black, half white? What if he was all black? Do you
I
think it
think it
was
might have been a harder role for him if he was all black, to be quite candid. But to your point, if it was a woman that more people saw themselves in, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris are a lot of things, and ahead of both of those lists, extremely educated. And that education creates a disconnect from the average person.
that's a good point.
So
She's too educated. That's true.
so you like you don't you operate in two different worlds almost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I believe that if there was a female candidate, and not to say that this person can't be extremely educated or credentialed or however you want to think about it, but they would have to possess those things and then also maintain a level of relatability, which ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like that's where it went left for her. Whether it be men, whether it be the Latino vote, whether it even be, some of the white vote, they did not view her as someone that was extremely relatable. In her, they did not see themselves. And not
So
that they saw themselves in Donald Trump, but there's a lot of things with Donald Trump that I think people, specifically younger people, identify with. His ability to be brash, unapologetic, speak his mind, do what he wants to do, no consequences. That resonated with a lot of people.
I agree. And audience, we're going to go a little bit longer today because there's another topic I want to bring up. So I'm just letting you know that now. We are at 42, about to be 43. That being said, all of the things that you said, 100% agree with. My question is there a woman, like, okay, is there a woman out there? People thought it was be Nikki Haley, but Trump obliterated her in the primaries, right? How about Big Gretch? That's what people call her on the streets. Big Gretch, right? That's your governor, Randy. What do you guys think about her? Do you think she has that main character energy or not?
I have not been here long enough. I've watched her from afar from my previous location, and I saw some of the work that she was doing here, but I haven't been long enough been here long enough to truly judge or gauge if that would be something that is or would transition to the national stage.
I think she's hot. I think she's a cougar. What do you think?
I, so there's that. I also don't think that, and this is where it's hard. This is a difficult conversation to broach because there's so many different layers to it. But for women, I once heard a female comedian say, it's really difficult for attractive comedians to be successful, attractive female comedians to be successful. And this was from a woman.
Hmm,
Um, just because of the way that they're perceived,
that's
and you're
true.
not looking at a beautiful woman to make you laugh.
That's
That's
true.
not
Very good.
the way that works, right?
Really good point.
And for Big Gretch, I think some of those same things exist in a different way. And I'm not sure that she would be able to truly galvanize an entire nation. I think she would over-index in certain pockets, but for that reason, there's other pockets that I don't know she would be able to motivate.
Stephen, you have anything to say or no? Can I go to the next topic?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I think she's attractive, but to your, that's, that's I would. She's a Democrat. She's attractive. She's strong. I would vote for her. But to your point, Randy, is that so much. I agree with you. When you said you don't an attractive comedian cannot be what was it, funny or whatever. But yeah, she
Yeah.
wouldn't. That the fact that if you're too attractive or if you're that's it's gonna cause a problem because and yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. She reminds me, just to close out this topic, I don't know if either of you have ever watched Scandal, but she
Yes.
reminds me of the woman from Scandal, the president's wife.
Wait, who's
She
that?
does look like her.
Who's the
Yeah.
president?
Yes. Oh my God. I forgot her name. It was something like
Yeah.
Millie or Billy or something. But yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. She does look like her.
But
Okay.
I do I so
Go
I will say that in my head the jury's still out, like whether she would be able to galvanize a whole nation. She does have some things going against her. You say, Randy, that you don't think she'd be able to galvanize a nation. Um yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see more of her. I'd have to see more of her to see what she's all about. To the point, yeah, I just have to see more of her to make a decision from my
and
perspective.
and does she have main character energy? Like there's that part. Like this is someone who I don't like. I don't necessarily agree with at all. I think she's extreme, right? I'm middle, but she has main character energy, and that is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, do I think she would win? No, but does she have that main character energy that everybody talks about? And but yes, she has that.
No, she's fucking nuts.
But that's my point. That's
That's I don't know if you call that main character energy. I don't know. I don't know.
okay. Next topic. Okay, I've got to touch on this. I feel like also too people in saying that this is not a big deal, but I do think it was a big deal. Trump ran that ad about the trans surgeries multiple times. I'm sure you guys saw it a lot. I saw it.
Nonstop.
I don't live in a swing state, and I saw it multiple times.
I
And
have not seen it. Can you enlighten me and the audience?
you know exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
really don't.
Don't be dumb. Okay, there was this article. I mean, there was this commercial about how Kamala came out and said that she would support transgender inmates getting surgery.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and they've run it all over. And this Kamala's for they, them. They had this crazy image, and then Trump is for you. Right. And so I'm laughing because I'm thinking of that crazy image that they had when they showed they, them. But I do think that that also too pushed a lot of people over the edge. I think there were a lot of women who are sports moms who don't want their daughters playing with transgender athletes. And they voted for him because of that.
I
Say that I'm saying this as someone who I'm not talking about, what side of this issue I'm on or not, right? Okay. But what I'm saying is that, well, actually, you know what? I will say this. I'm going to say this. I agree that transgender athletes should not play with women. I'm
Yeah,
going to say that. I do say that. And
I
I
agree.
say it personally, because I am a ex sports mom. And I would go to, first of all, when you go to all these tournaments just for one sport and you see how many thousands of people are there,
Mhm.
it's a whole other world. And the sport that I'm talking about, volleyball in particular, if you have a kid who is a transgender athlete and they are hitting and they have the power
Right, right.
of a man hitting at other women,
Yeah,
there's times of concussion,
yeah.
there's lots of injury that can happen, and these things that actually have been experienced. So I'm thinking, if a huge percentage of the moms, the volleyball moms that I know, went in there and voted for that, what about all the other sports that kids are playing? What about all the,
Yeah,
and then we're talking about in middle America.
yeah,
They play a lot more sports and do a lot more things than they do on the coast. I
yeah.
think that was an effective ad. People aren't talking about it. People say that it's discriminatory. It's a very small percentage, and it is a very small percentage. But if you are living in that world and you have kids and you know what
I
those types of situations can be,
I
you're
don't
going to
think
vote.
it's a small percentage. I think it's a large percentage. I know a lot of people that are concerned about their children playing sports with with someone that used to be a guy, or in the locker room with someone that used to be a guy, right? That someone
Yeah.
you know. So I've seen a lot of people with that concern.
Well, what I'm saying is the trans population is a very, very
Oh,
small,
I see. Yes. Okay.
right?
Got it.
Like less than 1%. And so I get that. If that's who you are, that is who you are. And I 100% am fine with you being who you are. Would never tell anyone not to be who they are.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that that is a different conversation. You being who you are, but then being a formerly biological man playing in women's sports, that's a separate issue.
Yes. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think that that was not, she should have come out if she wanted to win and address that. And
Hmm.
she never did.
Hmm.
And Brandy, what's your take on it? Because Stephen and I are having a conversation. And we're
No,
going
no
to
worries.
wrap up. This is going to be our final conversation, people. But go on,
Okay,
Brandy.
great discourse between the two of you. I don't have children, so there's some elements to this that I may not truly be able to experience until I am potentially in some of those gyms, so forth and so on. Having said that, um, it again goes back to
I want to just say
you.
one thing. You said gyms. I'm talking about convention centers. So go on. Just to
Well,
give people a,
think of it just as one and the same.
yes.
Locations where there's physical activity going on. Um, what it boils down to, again, I talked about it a little bit earlier. When you talk about hierarchies in our world, the when you can give people someone that they feel they can punch down on, it resonates with people, right, wrong, or indifferent. So earlier, I spoke about the ability to look down as a man and say, well, I'm not a woman, right?
Hmm.
And I wouldn't vote for a woman because I am a man. That same concept now exists for women as they begin to look down on what is the perceived hierarchy of someone who may have transitioned. So it's a very similar game that's just kind of going down that entire hierarchy. Having said that, I think there's two totally different poles of this conversation. There's one where you're talking about adults, which I believe her or the ad that Trump was running was more, it blurred the line basically. So it was talking about reassignment surgery in jails, which you're obviously talking about adults at that particular point. But
Yes.
some of the imagery that was being shared was more about youth sports. And there's some interesting things that happen with youth sports, specifically for children that are transitioning. If you have begun hormone reassignment or hormone therapy early in life, it mitigates some of those um, transitions in life, right? So as you go through puberty, it changes the way that testosterone is processed in the body, and you don't realize the same strength that a man of a different man may realize moving forward. So I think it is relevant to call out some of those differences when you talk about youth sports, and what are the guardrails that are in place to protect everyone that is playing in that youth sports environment.
Okay, so I 100% disagree with you because I have personally witnessed someone in transition playing on a court with other girls
Hmm.
while that person presents as a female. The strength was still there. It may not be as much, but it was
Hmm.
there. And a person got hurt. And so if
Hmm.
I'm saying this, right, and as I said, I'm not, and I don't think it's a hierarchical thing of pushing down on someone being trans. I'm fine if you're trans. If you're trans, be trans. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Particularly with you're right. I do think that they conflated the issues with the commercial because they were talking about adults and then the youth sports thing was integrated. So you're right about that. If you're an adult, you can do whatever you want to as an adult. That's your decision. But when you start talking about these sports parents and they can see the situation I saw, and they're talking about their kids, and there's so many different dynamics talking about their kids. They want their kids to play sports, they want their kids to play in college sports, they want their girls to get, it's harder to get in college, this is a way to do it, blah, blah. It gets real intense. There's
Hmm.
all these different dynamics. So you're not thinking about whether or not the hormones that this kid on the other side might lessen that strength, but it's still more than your daughter. There's always going to be that competition. But if that still feels like even more of a competitive edge, you're going to think that that's unfair. And that has nothing to do with the decision to be trans or saying that because that person is trans, that's not it. That's not the issue. The issue is the biological strength. But
Yeah.
that's my perspective. I'm going to let you have the last word, and then we're going to go. Oh,
Okay.
Stephen, unless you want to jump in.
I I just had one quick question. No, it's okay. It's about faith, so it's okay. We'll skip that for this time.
Yes, next time, next time. Go on,
All
Brandy.
right.
Go
It's a trailer for next time.
Yeah.
on.
I so Robbie, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I do believe that there is a large gray area. I am not fully qualified to have this particular conversation, but in some of the things that I've read, you have to start early, which it gets into this deep rabbit hole of a lot of different things that kind of become conflating challenges. But to the point that you're making, as you begin to mature and get past puberty, that's where the difference is profound, right? Because you can't put it. It's almost like remote work, right? You can't put these things back in the box once it's been out the box. So it's hard to flip the clock back post puberty. And there's one case that was super polarizing, maybe 2 years ago. There was a young person at Penn, I believe, the University of Pennsylvania, one of the Ivy League schools. They were a swimmer. And this person 1 year was on the male swim team and began their process of transitioning. And as a member of the male swim team, they struggled to get in the pool, so to speak. They weren't really a part of any of the relay teams. Their times weren't good enough to consistently qualify. And as they began to transition, they shifted from the men's team to the women's team. And as a member of the women's team, they set
I like how
an
your voice,
NC.
the pitch of your voice, like shoots up when he's like, "The what?" Sorry, go ahead.
They set a it's tonation. I'm here. I'm doing this. But they set like an NCAA record and blew the field out. It was 20 seconds, or it was an insane amount of shifting and kind of turnover from worst to first almost for this particular person. So your argument is completely valid. I think it's just a lot of nuance to it in terms of timeline. So that's the last anecdote that I have.
Well, thank you, Randy. And next week we will have a conversation about faith because I know Stephen's going to
Yes. I've
hold on to
so much
your
to say, so much
chat,
to ask,
people,
so much to
about
share.
what Stephen's going to say. But Randy, thank you so much for joining us today in this post-election conversation. We really appreciate it and really enjoyed this conversation.
My absolute pleasure.
Thank you
Randy,
so much.
it's been a pleasure talking about strippers with you, honestly.
I wouldn't have wished to do it with anyone else, Stephen.
I love it.
Oh my God. Okay, audience. So we got another episode and A for explicit. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. Remember, follow, give us feedback. We want to hear what you think. And again, have a wonderful week. Bye, everyone.